Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently I acquired the Lord of the Rings Battle in Balin's Tomb, a two-player light, very light, skirmish game from Games Workshop. I've already done a playthrough on the channel, and now with a good number of battles under my belt, enough at least to feel as bloated as a hobbit on his second breakfast, I thought it was time to put together a review. And I'll say this up front, my opinion of this game has changed considerably in the 2 weeks I've had it in my possession. It's been quite the roller coaster. So much so, I decided to make this review one of my very overdue stick to the script reviews, where I review a game based on a script. So here goes. Battle in Balin's Tomb is rubbish, but a sort of endearing kind of rubbish, with a lot of charm. It's a bit like homemade Christmas decorations, or a child's crayon drawing stuck on the fridge. But, unlike poorly glued homemade tat, this game comes with a £45 price tag, although, admittedly, I got mine for closer to 30 thanks to online discounts and loyalty schemes. I've spent a lot of time with this game in the past few days, playing and replaying the included scenario, first feeling one way about it, then feeling another, and ultimately, I think this game does one thing and it does it really well. It lets you introduce children to the world of miniature skirmish games and then give them a good experience by throwing the contest so they win without ever making it look like you threw the contest. Because, in my opinion, there's really only one good strategy for the Fellowship to employ in this game. If you use it, there's a good chance you will win. If you don't use it, you will most certainly fail. But here's the kicker. If you use the strategy, neither you nor your opponent will have fun. It takes some skill to write a scenario that messed up. And I admit, I sort of saw the strategy straight away, but I tried lots of different ways to win. I wanted to play the Fellowship how they are in the movies. I wanted Boromir and Aragorn charging into the goblins while Legolas danced along the walkways loosing arrows. I wanted the little hobbits fending for themselves, working as a team to protect Frodo, while Gandalf turned into a whirling dervish. You can play that way. The game caters for it, but I don't recommend it. Although, I guess I actually do, in a way. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, so I'm going to back up, and I'm going to front load this video with all of the positive things I can say about the game, just like the game itself front loads all of the fun into the first few turns. For a start, it's a strong theme that I really enjoy. I love The Lord of the Rings, and the scenes in Moria are some of my favourites. Instant points for that. It's also a particularly well chosen scenario for a one-shot game like this. It's a tense battle featuring a collection of incredibly powerful heroes defending weaker allies against insurmountable odds, with the looming shadow of a massive cave troll just waiting for its chance to barge in, all played out in a cramped claustrophobic space. It's an incredibly exciting encounter. Also, the quality of the materials is high, although some of the graphic design leaves something to be desired. The dice are engraved, the tokens are boring but thick, which incidentally is how a lot of people describe me, and the cards are durable, feel nice to shuffle, and have a very functional design that's easy to use, which incidentally is not how a lot of people describe me. The board has nice artwork too, although it's a bit hard for me to see what's going on with all the dark colours and red lines. Seriously, Games Workshop, stop putting red lines on dark backgrounds to mark out important things on your game boards. It's getting silly now. Of course, the game also includes 22 miniatures, and while some people will complain they are very old now, as some of them have been floating around for 20 years, I really like them. Sure, Games Workshop have improved their plastic production over the years, and the models that are in several parts don't fit together like more modern versions might, but these miniatures do have tons of character. They're screen accurate with decent detailing, and most importantly, they aren't over fussy. Legolas is probably a bit boring, but, you know, he's Legolas. The central dice mechanism is good too. The whole game revolves around rolling custom dice to attack and defend, and there are dice in 3 colours, blue for the Fellowship and red for the goblins, with a special grey dice for the cave troll. The dice have symbols for hits, blocks, and then a symbol that serves as a wild card, the ring for the Fellowship and the Eye of Sauron for the goblins. And the dice system is really just HeroQuest dice system. You roll swords for hits, your opponent rolls shields for blocks to cancel hits, and anything left over is applied as damage. The only wrinkle in the tried and true formula is that Fellowship members all have an ability they can trigger when they roll a special ring symbol. Speaking of those abilities, this is another really strong area of the design. All of the Fellowship feel unique, and they all feel at least to a certain degree like the characters as depicted in the film. Boromir defends his allies, Frodo can use the ring to escape, and Legolas can fire arrows at a terrifying rate. I should point out, as a general rule, I tend to prefer regular dice to custom dice. I prefer the granularity of numbers and the ease of applying modifiers. However, the custom dice here work really well for the type of game this is, which is just a really straightforward, accessible skirmish game aimed at younger and casual gamers, which again is something I do like about this design. I play a lot of different games, and it's nice to be able to go back to something I haven't played in a while and still remember exactly how to play it without rereading a 40-page rulebook. And I play a lot of games with my daughter, who recently turned 11, and this sort of game is really easy to learn and even easier to teach, so it's perfect for us. I always admire games that make a concerted effort to open up the hobby in that way. It fits very much with one of the driving forces behind why I run this YouTube channel in the first place. And when I say this game is streamlined, I really mean it. It's divided into 12 turns, and in each turn the Goblin player draws reinforcement cards, except for the first turn when reinforcements are skipped, then the Goblins activate, and then the Fellowship activate. Activating involves moving and attacking, or attacking and moving with each model you control, and that's pretty much all the rules. There are some very rudimentary line of sight rules that I'll get into in a minute, and that's it. The aim of the game is for the Fellowship to make it through 12 turns with at least 3 members of the Fellowship alive, and the Goblins are trying to stop that. If the Fellowship meet their objective and Frodo is still alive, they win, otherwise they draw. The whole thing is actually streamlined to the point of farce, and in my opinion, Games Workshop has gone too far with it. It feels like there were other rules that were jettisoned, either because the designers couldn't make them work within the confines of the scenario, or because they got short on time. I've joked previously that they streamlined it with a chainsaw, and it does feel that way, like large chunks of it got left somewhere between development and production. Games Workshop have tried hard to create something accessible and easy to play, or, if I was being cynical, they have tried hardly at all, and as a result, there's hardly anything to the game at all. There's a single scenario in a single environment with a single setup using the same characters who always have the same abilities and the same equipment, always playing out over 12 turns, and always with the same winning conditions on each side. The only real variation from game to game is when the cave troll randomly appears and where each goblin reinforcement arrives. Now, all those things don't necessarily mean a game has limited replayability. If that was true, chess wouldn't be infinitely replayable, and Games Workshop has been known to create very fun and thematic games from just a few moving parts. Assassinorum Execution Force is a fine example of a game with fixed squads, with fixed loadouts, playing a fixed scenario, which I've never grown tired of playing. But, here in this game, all those elements that are fixed in place do limit replayability, because ultimately there is only one way for the Fellowship to win, and once you've solved the puzzle, once you know what you have to do, good grief is the game boring to play. As I already mentioned, when I first started playing the game, I was playing the Fellowship in a way that I would call thematic. If you play that way, you will find that the first few turns of the game are really fun and exciting. You have a full team of mostly powerful heroes with a lot of options for how to organise them. Boromir has strong defensive abilities, so you have to think about how to position him. Meanwhile, Legolas lays down covering fire with Aragorn, Gandalf manipulates the goblins with his sorceress powers, and the hobbits huddle together for safety. But eventually, you will start to lose members of the team. Your options dwindle, and the game will degenerate into a dice fest where both teams are just riding the odds. This shift in the dynamic, this seesawing from fun day to mundane, crikey that's bad, is due to 3 main things: the flow of reinforcements, the setup of the battlefield, and the line of sight rules. The game plays out over 12 turns, and at the beginning of each turn from turn 2 onwards, the Goblin player gets reinforcements drawn from a deck of cards. To begin with, the Goblin player draws 1 card per turn, from turn 6 the Goblin player draws 2 cards, and for turns 11 and 12 the Goblin player draws 3 cards. Of course, this is to create an escalating threat that ensures the last few turns are as dramatic as possible. Only, it doesn't work. I mean, it works in as much as it ensures there are plenty of goblins milling about, but it doesn't work to increase the tension and excitement. By the last few turns of the game, it's not uncommon for almost all of the goblins to be in play, so you don't need to draw 3 cards per turn. Often the second and third cards are drawn and discarded just because your reinforcement pool is empty, and with a full complement of 12 goblins on the board, facing a diminished Fellowship, strategy takes a back seat as the Fellowship form ranks and weather a ridiculous number of attacks. The goblins don't need to think about what they are doing, they just rush forwards and attack. The Fellowship don't need to think about what they're doing, they just need to defend everything the goblins throw at them. Which leads to the second problem. The reason the Fellowship are weathering so many attacks is because they have nowhere to hide. The only terrain elements that block movement are the pillars, and they're placed around the edge of the board where they have almost zero impact on the game. So it isn't possible for the Fellowship to make use of terrain to create strong defensive formations. They just stand there getting shot at and poked at. And they will certainly get shot at a lot, because the line of sight rules in this game are, well, they're hardly rules at all. Simply put, if you're shooting at a goblin or a hobbit, any intervening models, pillars, or the tomb itself will block line of sight. If you are shooting at a human-sized target, only the cave troll and the pillars block line of sight. Oh, and all the bows have unlimited range. What this means is it's almost impossible for the non-hobbit members of the Fellowship to avoid being hit by arrows. Other models won't block line of sight, and the only terrain that can protect them are the pillars that are poorly positioned to be of any use. So turn after turn, the Fellowship just have to stand there, taking arrows to the face and hoping they make their saving throws. The hobbits are a little harder to hit, but two of them start the game completely exposed, and the goblins get the first turn. It's not uncommon for Pippin and Sam to be shot down with arrows in turn 1 before they even get a chance to move. Oh, and don't waste your time using Aragorn and Legolas to shoot the archers. Even if you can get line of sight to them, which often you can't because of all the other models on the board, there's really no point. Any goblin archers you kill will just pop up in the next reinforcement phase and activate that turn, and because they have unlimited range, with almost no concerns about line of sight, they can immediately start pinging you again. It's like they've never been gone. In fact, there's often no point killing goblins at all. Killing archers is a waste of time, and the goblins with spears are too weak to worry about. Only the goblins with shields are a real concern, and you want to kill those whenever they get close in the hope that they will respawn really far away and have to spend a couple of turns jogging back into battle. And in saying that, I guess I'm seamlessly sliding into the part of the review when I reveal the way for the Fellowship to win some of the time. And I say some of the time, as sometimes they won't win no matter what you do, because dice. I feel discussing this winning strategy for the Fellowship is important to my overall thoughts about the game, but of course there will be some people who are still exploring the game and learning strategies for themselves, so if you fall into that category you will want to skip ahead. I'll throw up a timestamp so you know where to jump to. Okay, so here's the thing. For the Fellowship to win, Frodo must survive. Frodo is a super squishy hobbit and really can't handle himself in a fight, but he does have some skills to keep him alive. The most important skill at his disposal is he can't be attacked by any enemy unless that enemy is adjacent to him. That means as long as you keep him hidden behind the other members of the Fellowship, he's completely immune to attacks. You can't shoot him, you can't jab him with spears, you can't even wallop him with the big monkey boy cave troll. The problem is making sure nothing gets adjacent. At least, that was the problem in my early games. If he's left open for even a second, then you can pretty much kiss your chances of winning goodbye. Which, incidentally, is another fault with this game. If Frodo dies, the Fellowship can no longer win, but they can still draw. They have to play the whole rest of the game, but only playing for a draw. While winning isn't everything, it can be demoralising to know by turn 3 of a 12-turn game that you've already lost. And funnily enough, that isn't the only way the game signposts the victor before the game is really over. Because the goblins always activate before the Fellowship, you actually know before the Fellowship take their last turn whether they've won or not. It sort of feels like Games Workshop quickly restructured the order of play once they realised that the Fellowship going first would make it too hard for the goblins to win. But I digress. The only real way to keep Frodo safe is to stick him in the bottom right corner of the board, where there is a special alcove just for him. So, to win the game, on turn 1 Frodo heads that way, and his allies surround him as much as possible. They may struggle a bit with this because Pippin and Sam are probably already dead. Never mind. Forge on. Do your best to surround Frodo, and whatever you do, don't shoot any of the 9 goblins that start on the board, especially if they have shields. It's counterintuitive, but the goblins start at the entrance of the tomb, so if you immediately run away from them, it's going to take them 2 to 3 turns to reach you. If you kill them, they go back into the reinforcement pool and then may spawn by the well or one of the trapdoors, which puts them much closer to you. So, run away, don't fight the goblins. By turn 3, Frodo should be nice and safe in his corner. You then surround him with bodies. You want Gimli, Gandalf and Aragorn up front, with Boromir directly behind providing his defensive buff. keep Legolas in reserve with any other hobbits, you now hold this pattern. The goblin archers will shoot you every turn. They will invariably shoot at Legolas because he has the lowest defense, or Boromir because he doesn't get a defensive reroll. There's nothing you can do about this, just hope you roll well. The spearmen and the shieldsmen will rush towards you. Whenever they get close enough, use Aragorn to shoot at the shield goblins. You want to kill those guys now because they are a bit dangerous, and there's a good chance that when they die they will respawn back at the tomb entrance, and it will take them another 3 turns to get back into the fight. Don't kill anything else until the goblins are right up in your face. Then hit them with everything you've got. You can kill spear goblins that get too close if you get the chance, but always prioritise the shield goblins because they're the dangerous ones. So, to recap the technique to this point, hide in the corner, don't kill stuff until it gets really close, and then focus on killing the shield goblins. Continue in this way until the cave troll turns up. The cave troll will take 3 turns to get to your corner of the board. That's 3 turns where you can shoot at him with Legolas and Aragorn. The cave troll is too big to hide behind any other models. If the cave troll survives, there will be too many goblins in the way for it to get adjacent to your heroes, which means it will have to make ranged attacks using just 2 red dice. That means the cave troll is no more dangerous than a shield goblin. Hope you block the attacks and keep shooting it until it goes away. If it ever gets adjacent to your heroes, then hit it as much as possible until it falls over. There's no clever tactic for killing the troll, you just have to roll the dice until the thing happens. Also, while this is happening, remember that the cave troll blocks line of sight for the goblin archers, so you might not take any incoming fire for a turn or 2, and that's always nice. Once the cave troll is dead, it's back to business as usual. Stand there, wait for dangerous shield goblins to get close, whack them, and then wait until they come back. If your dice rolling is average, you should be able to block almost all incoming attacks, and you will win the game. It's a foolproof plan, apart from the fact it relies entirely on being able to keep rolling defensive rolls when you're attacked. If you have bad luck, you'll lose, and there's nothing you can do about it. Oh yeah, and it's absolutely no fun at all. For most of your turns, the Fellowship won't be doing anything other than rolling defense dice. Most of them won't be within attack range of anything, and those that are may choose not to attack anything because there's no point. You really only need to worry about the troll and the shield goblins, and even then only when they're in range to attack you. Frodo, once he's in position, will just stand there and hope nobody sees him. Boromir won't fight unless absolutely necessary because you need his reroll ability more than you need his sword. Gandalf will occasionally get to push a goblin, like a schoolyard bully bursting with impotent rage, but that's hardly the most exciting thing to do. Meanwhile, the goblins will spawn, run at you at full speed, die, respawn, usually back at the gate, and then run at you again. There's no strategy on either side, it's just a war of attrition where the goblins hope to chuck enough dice to eventually score some hits, while the heroes stand there defending until the clock runs down. And that is that. And that's why you can't play this game competitively. You can't play with the intention of letting the Fellowship win. You play this game to introduce other people to miniatures gaming. You give them the goblins, you play the Fellowship how you would expect to play the Fellowship, and the goblin player will win. It's a fun game for adults to play with younger gamers for that reason. And yes, there are things to like in the design. I do like the dice system and the way special powers are triggered. I do like how each member of the Fellowship feels different and has powers that feel thematic. And of course, I love the idea of this game, that strong theme with those strong characters. But when it's said and done, this isn't a game I see myself playing much more. I love the idea of a really accessible Lord of the Rings skirmish game. I don't just love it, I admire it. But in attempting to create that, Games Workshop have made a game where strategy takes a backseat to rolling dice and where the obvious way to win means actively avoiding fun. Fortunately, the game does include those wonderful miniatures that can all be used in the Middle-earth strategy battle game. Thanks to those, I got more than enough for my money with this game. Although, Games Workshop have managed to foul that up too by not including profiles for using those models in their popular tabletop wargame, which is a ridiculous omission. And it goes without saying, anybody who already has those miniatures, there just isn't enough game here to justify the price of admission. Phew. While it may have felt like this road could have gone ever on and on, I think I'm almost done, and here we are at the end of all things. Before I sign off, I do just want to mention house rules. I considered introducing lots of different house rules for this game. As a rule, I don't like house rules, but this game really needs them. I thought about introducing elevation rules, as currently the game treats the raised walkways as if they were no higher than the rest of the board. I thought about changing the line of sight rules to give people more options for hiding from the archers. I thought about adding more terrain to the centre of the board to break up movement and line of sight. I thought about giving Frodo a mithril vest to help him stay alive longer. But all those house rules, every one I came up with, weren't necessary. Any other rules I thought to introduce just made the experience even worse. In one way or another, each idea created its own set of additional problems, enough that I could make another video about all the ways they fail. And I have to wonder, did Games Workshop walk that same road? Did they have these other rules and then one by one they were jettisoned because they just couldn't make it all gel together? And if they did, why didn't anybody at any point say, we may need to rethink this game from the ground up? The way it is, it just doesn't work. Because honestly, I don't think the problem here is the overly simple rules. Hero Quest was great fun with a simple custom dice combat system, and the dice system in Battle in Balin's Tomb is a bit more advanced. And Cursed City, Silver Tower and Shadows over Hammerhal were all excellent fun, and none of them had complicated line of sight rules. The real problem is having just that one scenario, forcing the game to play out in a wide open arena over 12 turns. The problem is Games Workshop didn't put those simple rules to proper use. They didn't make a Mines of Moria dungeon crawler. They didn't make Middle-earth Quest.